everybody. My name is Dr. Kevin William Jennings. I graduated in 2014 from Texas State University. Go Bobcats! Meow. And my PhD is in criminal justice, but I have a focus on kind of cybercrime and digital forensics. And this goes back to kind of when I was a teenager, 18, just out of high school. And my father had worked for IBM all of my life. And I was trying to choose a major I knew I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what I wanted to major in. All I knew was I didn't want to do computer science because I was a teenager. And when you're a teenager, you don't want to be like your dad. You want to kind of, go off and do something different. And I had a friend that said, oh, we should be cops. So I was like, that sounds awesome. So we took a semester of criminal justice courses, and I loved it. I was hooked. My friend dropped out after a semester and went off and did something else. But I really liked criminal justice because it combines lots of different areas that I was interested in, right? Criminal justice combines psychology and history and law and sociology and all these different subjects and kind of puts them all together under one roof. And I was really, really interested in that. So I went and I got a bachelor's degree, and then I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so I went back and I got a master's degree, and I taught English for a while in South Korea, and that was really fun, but then I came back and I'll go back and get a PhD. So I started a PhD program, and I'm much older, much kind of wiser, not the crazy teenager anymore at this point. And when you get a PhD, you really have to kind of focus down on one thing, right? You're no longer just studying criminal justice. You kind of have to narrow down that focus. And I was trying to think of, what should I do? And a fellow grad student of mine said, Kevin, the professors bring you their computers to fix because you're faster and you're better at it than the IT department here at the university. Why don't you do computer crime? And I was like, it's a really good idea. It's an emerging field, right? I mean, obviously we didn't have computer crime prior to the invention of computers, which is relatively very, very new. So I didn't have to reject what my father did anymore. I was able to embrace this kind of life growing up around computers and knowing a lot about computers and apply that to what I had learned to love about criminal justice. And started studying cybercrime, and it's fascinating and wonderful, and I love researching this area that's new, right? Lots of people love researching the areas that have been around forever, and that's great, and everybody has different tastes, but I really like being in this particular subfield that's kind of new and interesting, and there hasn't been a lot of work done in a lot of these kind of specific areas of cybercrime. For instance, some colleagues and I are starting to look at a research on non-consensual pornography, right? So, usually we assume, a girl takes naked pictures of herself, sends them to her boyfriend with the understanding that they'll remain private, but then they break up. Boyfriend is very upset with now ex-girlfriend, so he posts those pictures online, and in many cases will even give out her name and address and phone number. So that is a very new kind of crime, right? You can't do that crime without the internet. And we started looking into what past research has gone on about this non-consensual pornography, who's doing it, who the victims are they using any kind of techniques to block their identification of who posted the pictures. And there's very, very little research out there. So we're having a hard time dealing with a literature review for a kind of a crime that's essentially brand new. I also got really into digital forensics because I started a job at Armstrong State University in Savannah, Georgia, and they had an absolutely wonderful digital forensics lab in the police department. And the police chief and I and many of the officers formed this partnership where we could use that lab to teach students, but that lab was also open and accepting cases from local police, state police, federal law enforcement. All brought digital forensics cases to this teeny tiny little university digital forensics lab because they would analyze all these different, hard drives and cell phones, and analyzed an Xbox once, and we did it for free, and gave them these huge reports that were hugely influential in whether they were able to arrest and convict somebody for that crime. That digital forensics data, that digital forensics evidence, is incredibly influential on whether somebody gets arrested and convicted for that crime. So I got here, and for the first few years, I was getting data about what kinds of cases they were viewing, what kind of cases were being brought to them, and kind of at the first stage of my research, I found out just through descriptive statistics. Descriptive statistics are kind of looked down upon a little bit in the hardcore statistics communities, but in reality, they can be incredibly informative. And just descriptive statistics showed me, or showed the research team, that the cases being brought to this digital forensics lab aren't what kind of most people would expect. They weren't all, like child porn and network intrusions and hackers and all these things. Although they did a few of those cases, the vast majority of what was being brought to them to investigate were murders and rapes and robberies and drug dealing and burglary and those kind of normal everyday crimes that existed long before computers, but now today they have that cyber component. So that was a really interesting finding that we got just from kind of a very basic look at this data. And then unfortunately our university merged with another university, and I lost that entire partnership. That entire source of data from that police department is now no longer available, which is definitely a difficult thing for a researcher to face. When you have this great source for data, and then kind of halfway through your program or halfway through what you intended to gather, it gets cut off, right? So you kind of have three choices. You can completely stop your data gathering and just say, well, this program is over, and all the effort I've put into it is now kind of useless and wasted. Second thing you can do is try to modify what your research is really going into, kind of scale back the goals of the research a little bit in order to make it so that the data you already have is kind of good enough. It might not have been good enough to answer your original question or your original goals for the research, but it might be able to kind of answer a smaller question or slightly lesser goals for that research program. Or the third option is to kind of find another place to get either the exact same data or similar data from, say, another, in my case, I could have found another digital forensics lab that was doing similar work, and start gathering data from them. So yeah, that's research to me. I really enjoy looking at the interaction of human and technology, and when they come together and create some kind of crime, that's just fascinating to me. So please let me know if you have any questions or comments for me. I really appreciate it. Good luck.